Yeah, I know. You can practically hear the party poppers going off right now, and everyone is swigging a glass of champagne because Nick is doing another video about bread. I know, maybe it's a bit of an anticlimax for you. You were hoping I was going to try and summon the devil, or do another Ouija board seance, or play around with my crystal pendulum, or maybe do something even more bizarre and peculiar. But right now, bizarre and peculiar for Nick Dutch happens to be making bread. And trying to get my head around the whole making a soda bread thing, which is gluten-free, yeast-free, sugar-free, dairy-free, okay? Which is quite a hard thing to do, basically. Because all the soda bread recipes out there, they contain buttermilk, because buttermilk makes the acid, and the acid works with the bicarbonate of soda, and so on and so forth, and a reaction can occur, the bubbles are created, bread rises, and so on and so forth. Now, what I've decided to do now, my previous recipe was 1 cup of Dove Farms white bread flour, which was of course gluten-free. Then sorghum, potato and gram in various different quantities, making up a total of 4 cups of flour altogether. To that 4 cups of flour I would add a half a teaspoon of cream of tartar, a quarter teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda to make up the equivalent of 1 teaspoon's worth of proper baking powder, and a half a tablespoon of lemon juice and fizzy water. The bread itself, although it was edible and it had a nice rise to it, it was rather sharp afterwards. It made my stomach feel a bit irritable. I decided that was to do with the acid, so I got rid of the lemon juice. And I finally got rid of the fizzy water as well, and increased the quantity of cream of tartar and bicarbonate of soda. And I got comparable raising. Okay, now, so the equivalent of 2 teaspoons of baking powder, or gluten-free baking powder, or in this particular case 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar and half a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda seems to be basically the kind of proportions that you need. There's still a slight soda-y flavour, but on the other hand it's not quite as serious. Right, flour mixes. When I added potato flour, and 1 whole cup's worth of potato flour to the blend, I got very interesting patterns on the inside of the bread. Looking more like the way a real bread would look, and I presume that's the starch in the potato flour reacting with the other ingredients in the Dove Farms white bread flour, and as a result of that it helps to create some nice bready structures, but they can get a bit too much. It's too spongy. Potato flour itself seems to create a very spongy, rubbery texture. So you want some of that to create the rising, to create the whole bubbly breadiness. You don't want too much of it, otherwise it can basically be like eating rubber. Alright. The sorghum flour that I've been using, I'm starting to develop a taste for. It actually seems to taste quite nice to me now, and before it was just like Indian restaurant. It's now sort of like I'm getting used to it, and it does seem to taste much more floury to my appalling palate. But it's supposed to be very nutritious, so I'm going to carry on using it. Proportion wise, well, that's very variable. At this stage now I can actually make a loaf which can makes bread, which I can now slice and I can now toast under the grill. Okay, things are, we're getting close there. Now it's a question of just getting a little more artistic about how I blend the various different flours. And I haven't yet used buckwheat flour, but my delivery is coming either later on this week or towards the beginning of next week, and so then I'll be able to start experimenting with buckwheat. But essentially the proportions I'm now using is still 4 cups worth of flour. In another video I'll show you the cup measures I've got. So I've got the 1/8 cup, the 1/4 cup, the 1/2 cup and the cup measure. Okay, and so you'll be able to see basically what it looks like. And this is a measure of volume, not of weight. I presume there's an importance to that, I don't know. The only other thing I would say is mixing the dry ingredients very, very, very thoroughly, like 200 or more stirring motions in random directions all over the place, and turning it and all the rest of it until the whole lot is thoroughly mixed, is essential. Otherwise you don't get even rising, you get all kinds of weird marbly effects inside the bread, you get dense bits, you get too much air in other bits, and peculiar stuff. Now you don't want that, so mix dry ingredients very thoroughly. The fizzy water. The fizzy water is good as the water in the bread if you're going to use less of the other raising agents, because I'm assuming therefore that the carbon dioxide bubbles forms inside the dough, creating lots of little bubbles, which when you shove your bread into the preheated oven will then start to expand and become part of the rising process. So that's air and steam leavening, rather than just purely the carbon dioxide from the leavening agents leavening. And one quick correction I'll make is you make a kind of a batter, not a dough, and you pour it into a bread tin. And I am totally gorged on bread. And today's recipe involved the sorghum, some potato and rice flour, and also the Dove Farms white bread flour, gluten-free. Another level of my experimentation will have to be to see whether I can reproduce the effects and the ingredients type mixtures of the bread making flour, which I've bought commercially, to see whether I could replace that, cut down the cost of making a loaf, and also to protect myself against the possibility of Dove Farms actually going bust during the recession, and me still being able to get the base, or at least one of the base ingredients for this particular bread mix. Okay, that's basically where I'm at the moment. You can put your party poppers away. That is today's bread video over and done with. You may now smear margarine all over your monitor and take a big bite. Well, actually don't do that, that would be bad for you. Alright, speak to you soon. Bye for now.